If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. Well, in today's episode, we have a longtime friend of the Aging Well podcast, Sandi Griffin, joining us again for the third time, not counting times that we shared presentations from her 12-week transformation. Sandi is a mother, a bodybuilder, a fitness trainer, a mountain biker, and self-proclaimed foodie, and just a good friend of the podcast. And so we welcome her to the podcast today to talk a little bit about kind of food and habits for healthy holidays. So welcome, Sandi.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's kind of just jump into it. How do you manage your fitness and body composition goals over the holidays, especially, when you were in your competitive years?
Yeah. So and just a minor correction, I'm a retired bodybuilder now, but still love that whole lifestyle and all that goes into that, and still live it. But it when you have a goal that strict and it requires so much discipline, but you're a huge foodie, it's kind of a conflict of interest. So finding that balance of living life and making sure that I'm not depriving my family of joy, and also sticking to my goals, which were incredibly important to me at that time. Finding that balance was kind of fun and challenging at the same time. One of the first things was actually speak my goals out loud. It's one thing to set a goal. It's one thing to say you want to do something. But if we do not say it out loud, if we don't share it with others, then it's an imaginary goal. If it's in our head only, then it's an imaginary thing, and we will let ourselves fail every single time. We will talk ourselves out of doing the things we should be doing, and we will talk ourselves into doing the things we shouldn't be doing. Once I say it out loud, and now I have somebody else kind of watching for me to adhere to those goals, now it becomes very real. And it also gives me permission to ask for help when I'm struggling. So that was my very first recognition of how important goals were, and not just setting them, but sharing them. And I needed that accountability. I'm a coach too. I love providing an accountability, but I'm human and I need the accountability just as much as anyone else. So asking for help, being honest, like today I'm struggling. I want to tear up whatever is in the cupboard today, or we're going out to dinner and you guys are having chips and salsa, and that's not fair. I was very honest about my weaknesses, where I was struggling. And there were days where I'm like, I'm good. You guys do whatever you want. I'm cool today. I'm really in the zone. I'm feeling it. But just sharing what I needed and what kind of support I needed that day was probably the primary thing of me surviving the holidays, where all the foods that you don't usually get except for once a year were in your face all the time for those, through November, December timeframe. That was a huge thing for me.
I got a question for you. Isn't being a bodybuilder kind of like being a Marine? Yeah, once a Marine, always a Marine. Once a bodybuilder, always a bodybuilder.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once you have a taste of that lifestyle, it's hard to not live that lifestyle, even post competition. I don't step on stage anymore, but it is still ingrained into the very depths of my soul.
You don't see too many bodybuilders or people that have committed themselves to being as fit as possible, ever letting themselves really just go. I mean, I there's probably some out there, and those are probably the ones that have just got so beat up by the sport that they don't want anything to do with it anymore. But
yeah. I was blessed to have amazing coaches. And I think the reason I got into the sport led me to great success after. So I discovered the sport through my fitness journey because I wanted to be healthy and I didn't want to die and leave my kids without a mom. So that is still my mantra and that is still my why today. So, and now I'm a grandma, so I don't want to leave my grandbaby without a grandma.
Well, let's share that story a little bit more of your fitness journey, because some of our listeners might not have heard episode 8 when you were on the show for the first time.
Yeah. So my journey began in 2007. Actually, we moved to Germany in 2002 as a military family, and that was a really rough transition for several reasons: just the cultural differences, language, feeling isolated as a military spouse with 3 young children. I didn't have a job, so I was a stay-at-home mom. That is a job, but I didn't have a job outside of my home, and just all the new foods and just the weather, the seasonal depression, seasonal affective disorder is very real. And it was very challenging for me, just our first year there. And my husband and I had spent a year apart. He had spent a year in Korea on a remote assignment. So we had just been back together a few weeks before we moved to Germany and became a family again. So there was a lot of stressors involved with that move. And I gained about 30 pounds our first year. And I stopped weighing myself after a certain point because it was embarrassing. But I know I gained beyond that point. I probably reached close to 175 pounds at 5'3". I'm 5'2.5" now, but who's counting? I was sedentary. I had never stepped foot in a gym, was eating I wasn't necessarily overeating. And this is one thing that a lot of people don't realize. You don't have to eat 3,000 calories a day to gain weight. You simply need to starve yourself and then eat the wrong foods at the wrong time, and you can gain a considerable amount of weight as well. And that was me. I don't necessarily believe I was eating exorbitant amount of foods, but the foods that I was eating and how I was eating them were terrible. And I got to a point where high blood pressure, pre-diabetic, had to have my gallbladder taken out. The markers for that are female, fat, 40, and fertile. And I was 33 years old. So I was on the fast track to just a horrible, just devastation to my health. And a friend of mine nearly died of an aneurysm. She was kind of in the same boat, a few years older than I was. She was 40, and she was sedentary, had blood pressure that was not being treated, and had a brain aneurysm and nearly died. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be me in just a few more years if I don't stop and if I don't change what I'm doing. And my kids were very young at the time, very preschool to early school age. And I was like, that's not fair to my family. They deserve a healthy mom, and my husband deserves a healthy wife. And I needed to make some changes. So I just started small. And through my transformation, people started asking me for help. And I'm like, I barely know what I'm doing to help myself. So I tell everybody I became a fitness coach by accident. I sought out a certification just to make sure the things I was doing for myself were healthy and solid. I didn't want to trade one health issue for another by doing something that was, unhealthy or unrealistic. And took it from there. Discovered bodybuilding. My husband kind of talked me into doing a show. That's how I discovered accountability and fell in love with the sport after that. And just, I love being healthy, and my kids love, being active with us. So that's a huge piece of our family lifestyle.
I think that's a huge part of it, is that you have to have that supported home in order to be able to do anything in the area of fitness. Because if everybody's living a lifestyle contrary to what you're trying to do, it's just an uphill battle the whole way. And so it's really great that you had that support in your husband and your kids, and continue to have that support. I mean, I love watching how active you guys are. It's really fun.
They are absolutely amazing. I could not have done it. I didn't have it in me when I first started to tackle all of that. And without their support, I never would have been as successful as I was.
So as a trainer, and you probably most certainly encounter people that don't have that support at home. How do you deal with that? I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
even if you do have support at home, it's my goal. It's my why. Why am I doing this? What is important to me? And even with support, it's not their responsibility for me to succeed. It's mine. And so that's one of the first things is I tell people, you can't do this for anybody else. You can't do it because your husband wants you to look thinner or to whatever. Of course, my husband wanted me to be healthy, but I couldn't do it for him. I had to do it for me. I had to want to be healthy. So whether you have support or not, it's your goal. It's not dependent on everybody else's support of you, because there's going to be a lot of people that don't. They would love to bring you down into their misery because it's hard for them to step out of it. And when it's your goal and you're doing it because you love yourself, nothing else really matters at that point. Yes, it's hard. Yes, that there's going to be days where you wish you had support and it would make it a whole lot easier. But when you are determined to do things because you love yourself and you truly want to be healthy, the external support becomes less important, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I appreciate you articulating that. I like that. So do you have exercise recommendations for those of us, and particularly, women in your position or in your former position? I mean, I think you've made tremendous gains in that process, but do you have any exercise recommendations for women who are wanting to make that lifestyle change and, for the sake of this podcast, want to age well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I just turned a big 50 last month. So I feel like I'm in the next level here. I'm getting close to your level. I'm not at your level yet, Jeff, but I'm getting there.
You're still a youngster.
But I the biggest advice I give on exercise, especially if you're beginning your journey, is start small. Don't try to tackle joining a gym, going 5 days a week, just killing yourself. That's never a good idea. In fact, when I started my journey, I was riding a recumbent bicycle in our basement just a few days a week. And I would treat myself by watching a program that I loved on Netflix or whatever it was at the time. And I would only allow myself to watch that show if I was on the bike exercising. And that's truly how small I started. And there are so many options available. I know there's a lot of hesitation for a lot of females to go into a gym environment because it's very intimidating when you see a lot of fit people, or it's a male dominated space oftentimes. And that can be a little bit intimidating for somebody who's never dipped a toe into any type of fitness realm. There are lots of opportunities on YouTube that are free that I really recommend, not just for beginners, but actually, or just somebody just wanting to kind of try out a fitness program or to get started. But when it can be done in the comfort of your home too, it goes anywhere. I'm in South Africa right now, and I can watch a video on TV if I want to. I have a lot of military clients that travel a lot, or just professionals that travel a lot and are away from home, and they need to make sure they can keep up with their fitness. So there's 3 things that I really recommend. One is just actually 4. Start small is the first thing. If you're not doing anything, start with just 2 days a week, maybe a Tuesday and a Thursday, whatever day of the week it is for you that works. Just start small and maybe 30 minutes, because anything is better than nothing. And if you can learn to enjoy it and you can give your body a time to adjust to that, it's going to be a very positive experience. If you start off too much too soon, you risk injury, you risk burnout, you risk being super sore and adding stress to your life, which is typically most of us have a lot of stress in our lives already, the last thing we want to do. So easing it in and being realistic, like I'm going to give it 2 weeks of 2 days a week, and then I'm going to try for a 3rd day. Don't prolong it too long, but you can gradually increase your activity. YouTube channels, some of the ones I recommend, and I'll provide these links later, is Fitness Splenda. It's a husband and wife couple that are just really big into fitness. They have all levels, all different time frames of their workouts, all different things you can do. Pop Sugar Fitness is another one that's, again, very short. You can do 10-minute workouts to 45-minute workouts. They're very non-threatening. But for those that are a little bit more advanced, they do offer advanced options. And then there's lots of yoga channels. Just any movement of any kind is better than sedentary doing nothing. Yeah. So just stretching, mobility. There's so much more than just cardio or strength training, which are incredibly important, especially for women as we age. But if you're looking at just getting started, even some mobility and stretching, just learning how to feel your body, which will aid you in as you progress into resistance training and other activities, learning how to feel your body, how it moves, what it feels like, what's comfortable, what's not.
Perfect. And what are your favorite exercises?
What's not my favorite exercise? Unfortunately, my favorites, I'm kind of unable to do a lot of them anymore. But like my favorite at my bodybuilding days, I loved pull-ups. Number one favorite exercise, bench press and squats. Those probably my top three. But I truly believe the back is the most beautiful piece of the human body. It's so intricate and complex, and I think it's undervalued. So everybody can have abs, but not a lot of people can have a beautiful back. So
I agree there. And I stress that with my wrestlers all the time when we're doing strength and conditioning. So many of them go right to the barbells and start curling or, dumbbells and doing curls. And it's like, guys, why are you working on the smallest muscle in your body? Work on the stuff that's going to give you the greatest change. And, the chest is overrated when it comes to athleticism. It's like, oh, what do you bench? It's like, who cares what you bench? Because how often in most sports are you doing that particular motion? But how many pull-ups can you do? How much can you pull down? I love the compound row. I've been doing that a lot with the wrestlers. But my favorite now is the Zercher squat and anything Zercher. I found for my back, it's just been so much better. And I can actually lift a lot more in that position, which seems unusual, but I feel it in my core. I feel it in my upper back. I feel like my posture is better and it's tearing up my legs. And so it's like, if I can only do one exercise, it's going to be that.
Best of all the worlds.
Yeah. So let's see. So talking the holidays, I know you were really great about meal prepping. And, I've enjoyed some of the different stuff that I've learned from you on that. And we'll get into some of your favorite holiday recipes and some of that a little bit later in the podcast. But as we look at kind of not only being healthy on a regular daily annual basis, but during the holidays, how do you manage preparing meals so that you're not going to indulge in all of the temptations that are sitting out there during the holidays? And how do you plan meals that are going to be healthy, but are going to be those memorable holiday meals?
Yeah. So one of the first things that really stuck with me, and it was somebody made this comment to me early in my bodybuilding career, because I kind of went, the pendulum can swing too far in any direction. And so if I do something, I'm 100%er. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to the extreme. And I had to learn a balance with that. One, for myself to be healthy, because I think any extreme is too extreme. And the second, for my family, I needed to make sure that I wasn't depriving my family of living life just because I had this particular goal. And somebody once said to me, we work hard so we can enjoy these things. So one of the first things is never feel like you have to deprive yourself and give all the joys of life up just because you have a fitness goal or because you want to live a healthy lifestyle. With that comes some responsibility that we can't just treat ourselves anytime we want to just because we exercise that day or mark the exercise box off, because depending on the level of intensity of your exercise and what type of exercise, doing a yoga class versus a heavy lift followed by cardio are two very different types of exercise when it comes to caloric intake for our bodies and just the nutritional need for our bodies. But learning how to manage your having some fun things, because the holidays are very special. Some of these family recipes we only make for that particular meal. And in that case, I'm going to have that and I'm going to enjoy it as it is. I'm not going to try to alter it. My grandma's homemade mac and cheese recipe, Jeff, I'm sorry, we're using real full fat cheddar cheese and it starts with a stick of butter. I mean, it's just, that is something that is important to me. It's special to me. It brings back memories of being with my grandmother. I'm not going to change that. However, that being said, I'm not going to have a half a plate of macaroni and cheese. I'm going to have a moderate portion of it and enjoy it as it is, but I'm not going to indulge in too much. Same thing with alcohol Of course we want to celebrate. We might want to have a rum and eggnog with our friends and family, or a glass of really nice bottle of wine with dinner, or a great beer that your friend just brought from this local brewery or whatever. It's okay to have that, but just make sure you limit that. And again, I'm going back to the goals. I'm going to say it out loud before I get there. Hey, Griff, my husband, when we go to dinner tonight, this is my intention. I'm going to have a small bit of this. I'm going to have one glass of wine, and I'm going to have a little. I want you to share a dessert with me after dinner, and that way I've said it out loud, and he's going to help make sure that I adhere to what I just spoke out loud. So it's kind of a twofold thing: is one, have a plan, but two, share your plan with somebody else. And I would say the biggest things with holiday meals is sugar and alcohol. Carbs are not bad. Sugar can be very devastating to people's bodies, mine included. And even though I've lived a healthy lifestyle for nearly 15 years, I've eaten like a diabetic for the last 15 years, I still have elevated A1C numbers, and that's just genetic. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which causes hormonal things and insulin resistance. And even though I am very careful about my diet, I still have to watch my A1C numbers. So sugar is definitely my number one enemy, as is alcohol, and I love wine. So I have to be moderate with my intake of all of those things. So just identifying, what do you want? What is most important to you at the holiday meal? Can I make a few adjustments in the amount that I eat, or the frequency that I'm going to have it throughout the month? And are there healthy alternatives to that recipe? And when we talk about like my favorite recipes, one of the ones that is important to me, I found a way to make two things, actually. Found a way to make it incredibly healthy, actually. And I didn't feel like I was depriving myself. I felt like this is just as good as the other. And I can feel really confident that I'm actually doing good things for my body. And I don't have to feel guilty like I have to go do 2 extra hours of cardio after dinner.
I like that. And I tend to think of, when we talk about diet, and you hear, diet is die with the T. And that's the wrong approach to really diet. And when we're kind of refusing ourselves things that are enjoyable, it makes it more miserable, and it makes us less likely to diet, or to what I would say more of a hypocaloric diet. What we need to do is just be focused more on enjoying our food, but enjoying it in moderation, and considering food as our fuel for performance, for energy, rather than depriving ourselves of anything. Okay, I'm going to have this dessert, but I'm going to enjoy it. And if it's not something I enjoy, then it's not something I should really have,
Yeah. And I look at, are the calories worth it? Is it going to taste as good as I think it is? Because if it's not, I'd rather have my calories somewhere else.
Yeah. I had a student last week bring donuts into class. I don't know why he brought them in. I never asked. But the smell of those donuts made me nauseous. And I've just gotten my body to the point where I have no desire for donuts, because every time I eat one, it's just like, why am I doing this? And of course, you continue to eat it. And every bite is like, why do I keep doing this? And it's like, why eat something like that? You don't like it. You might get tempted. You might feel like, oh, yeah, I haven't had a donut in forever. And then you take that bite and it's like, well, this isn't really worth it. And these were good donuts. They weren't like Krispy Kreme donuts, which I only buy those once a year during wrestling when they're selling it as a fundraiser. And I kind of bite the bullet and buy them and hope that the kids will eat them all, because I don't like them. They're just nothing to them. There's nothing sustainable about them. But I was just sitting there the whole class just feeling nauseous because I could smell just that greasy sugar.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, please get those out of here. But
yeah, I'd rather, like, and during my bodybuilding years, I would always compare everything to oatmeal. I love oatmeal. Like, give me some oatmeal with some coconut sugar and, like a little sprinkle of cinnamon. I'm good to go. So I compare everything. It's 150 calories and it's great complex carbohydrates. I compare everything to that 150 calorie bowl of oatmeal because I love oatmeal. And if it's not going to compare to that, like, no.
Right.
It's a simple things. Once you like you said, once you're away from that kind of food, it becomes so less intriguing than some things that are like really great for you. And that becomes your new like standard. That's my standard. So
and my friend John McGuire, it's also been on the podcast a couple of times. he went through a period when we were roommates when I lived in New York. He had some health issues and was really limited in what he could eat that wasn't tearing his body up. And one of the foods that he could eat on a regular basis was sweet potatoes. And he would eat, they were like candy to him. I mean, he could just sit there and gnaw on just a baked sweet potato, nothing on it, no butter, no sweetener, nothing, just eat it. And it was just like candy to him. And it's amazing how our brains become so accustomed to eating certain foods that they become delicious to us. And this other stuff just eventually becomes nauseous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just practice, I think. I think it's a lot of, when we talk about holiday eating, a lot of it is just bad habit. We put out bowls of candy and we eat them because they're there, but you're sitting there like, why am I grabbing these M&Ms just because they're green and red? I don't need them.
Yep.
You wrap Hershey Kisses in, something other than silver foil, and it suddenly, the red and green ones taste better for
taste so much better. Yeah.
Yeah. Or we've
been programmed.
Yeah. And so it's that deprogramming. It's reprogramming ourselves to be able to eat the things that are going to be most enjoyable to us and give us some level of reward rather than regret.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, sugar is such a drug to our brain. There's been so many studies on that. And I think it's like, if you've ever known somebody that has quit smoking and the smell of smoke it repulses them once they're clean from all of that, all those chemicals and the nicotine, the smell of smoke just makes it turns their stomach. And I think if we can help our body stay away from those types of foods long enough, we have the same, you and I have that same response now. It just takes time. You have to be patient with your body and patient with your habits and be disciplined and dedicated to your goals to get there.
Yeah, I've never smoked, but I think I've become increasingly sensitive to cigarette smoke and even just the after effects of cigarette smoke. I mean, I can walk by somebody who is, smoked a cigarette within the last 10 minutes and you're like, oh, that's horrible. I can't stand that smell. Get away from me. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's jump into some of your recipes. What are some of your favorite holiday foods?
Well, so I love cranberries. The dried cranberries in any form, really, like, except for I'm not just going to throw a raw one in, of course, but cranberry sauce is kind of a holiday staple. And that is, aside from desserts, probably one of the most sugary foods. And then, of course, there's sweet potato casserole. But that was something that I just love on my turkey. And as a bodybuilder, it's not okay to have sugar. So I very simply, homemade cranberry sauce is the easiest recipe in the whole wide world. It is easier than making rice. So it's just fresh cranberries, a sweetener of your choice. And at the time I used Splenda. Today I would probably change to coconut sugar. I really tried to get away from the artificial sweeteners and into more natural sweeteners that are low glycemic, so that fit my diabetic lifestyle, or diabetic nutrition lifestyle. And it's just a little bit of orange zest, a little bit of cinnamon, some water, and a sweetener of your choice. And voila, you have cranberry sauce that is basically cranberry sauce made like that is the equivalent of salsa. There's basically no calories. There's nothing detrimental. Even if, we're talking a quarter cup of cranberry sauce is going to go a long way on turkey. You're talking about maybe 5 to 10 calories and a little bit of fiber, and that's about it. So it can be a delicious addition. And then especially for leftovers, because white meat turkey doesn't usually fare very well after a few days. So if you want to keep it a little moist when you reheat it, everything, throw some cranberry sauce on there. Desserts are probably one of the biggest things with Thanksgiving. Of course, we love the pumpkin pie and the pecan pie. I haven't found a way to really do a pecan pie that's not just completely, going to lead you into a diabetic coma with all this sugar. And so with that, I would say, enjoy a small piece, or make, little pecan tarts instead of a whole slice of pie. That would be one suggestion. But pumpkin's my jam. I love pumpkin pie. So I actually have a recipe on my website. It's a protein pumpkin apple tart. Pumpkin apple cheesecake tart, excuse me. So it's a pumpkin cheesecake. Yeah. With cream cheese. It is delicious. And the way and a lot of the things about food is not just the food itself, but what we see. So when you go to a restaurant and they present food on your plate in a beautiful manner, the presentation means as much as the way that it tastes. You can have an amazing, food item, but if it's not presented well, your eyes are kind of like meh, and your palate's going to be like meh. But if it's beautifully presented, even a meh could be like, oh, because it makes you feel special here first. And then it tastes amazing. So this pumpkin apple tart, I promise it tastes amazing first, but the way that it's presented is also beautiful. So it's made with a phyllo crust. Phyllo dough, if you've never worked with that, is kind of a paper thin. It's the same dough that's used in baklava. And you use that as your crust. Really, really simple to put together. Even a beginner in the kitchen can do this recipe. To do the topping with the apples, it makes it look like a apple flower on the top. You just slice your apple wedges really, really thin. And if you have a mandolin or the Pampered Chef apple peeler core slicer, works really well. And you super thinly slice your apples and you just make what looks like a flower when it bakes. You leave the skin on there and everything, and a little pecan in the middle. It's a gorgeous presentation. Your guests will feel like you have just gone above and beyond. And it really doesn't take that much more time than putting together a pumpkin pie. So that one.
Salivating.
And you can make it with protein powder or without. So if you have higher protein goals, if you're in more of a fitness lifestyle and are looking to keep those protein numbers up a little higher, you can throw in some vanilla protein powder in that recipe. If that is not a goal, you can remove that, and the recipe is absolutely beautiful without it, and still a higher protein, lower carb recipe.
I found a flavorless whey protein. I think it's bulk supplements. Pretty soon. It's like one of the cheapest ways that I've found out there. And I've been trying it for myself since the brands that I normally buy are either they've gotten suddenly very expensive or they're not available right now. So I went ahead and got some of it. So I'll have to use some of that over, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
See if we can try a few recipes with that, because it's going to add protein without really adding anything, any other flavor or anything to the recipe, I would assume, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Flavorless protein is so versatile. Especially if I have a lot of clients in the past that have been bariatric patients or gastric sleeve patients they really need to focus on their protein intake and highly digestible protein. So that's another option. And especially for people that need to make sure that they boost that and don't have the volume in their stomach still. So
I got to try in coffee. I haven't tried it in coffee yet.
Yeah, I don't know. Flavorless, I don't know. Chocolate and coffee, make a mocha.
Oh, I know that that chocolate protein tastes pretty good in coffee. But I'm wondering if just the plain, you're not picking up any flavor, but it's going to have a certain texture or creaminess to it without adding cream or any fats or anything to the coffee.
Yeah.
I'll have to try that.
Well, kind of moving into beverages with my favorite recipes, one of my other weaknesses and my family's weakness is eggnog. And I knew this was an amazing recipe because I had 3 teenagers, and I have one teenager at the time. He's a grown adult now, but at the time he was my eggnog connoisseur. And I poured him a glass. I didn't tell him it was my recipe, and he didn't know the difference. And I was like, okay, I have just won big time.
Yeah.
I have scored big time on this recipe. Eggnog is egg yolk. It's traditional eggnog is made from egg yolk. And I'm like, how can I make this? Because eggnog is just full of sugar. And you can get light eggnog, which is a little bit reduced, but it's still full of sugar. It's just less fat. So calories come down a little bit. How can I make this bodybuilding friendly? There were many times I competed the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Oh.
And these are major competitions. So I couldn't even have real Thanksgiving dinner. I got my turkey, sweet potatoes, my cranberry sauce, and I could have a glass of my eggnog. That was about it. And some broccoli or whatever. But how can I make eggnog to stay within my goals and feel really good about it? And I started looking up some recipes, and I just kind of took a few different recipes and made it my own. Egg beaters, which is just basically egg whites with some flavors and some coloring added to it, is the equivalent of, the macros of just a plain egg white, but it's got that creamy texture. Add a little sweetener and some fresh ground nutmeg to it and some protein powder, and you have a protein shake that tastes like eggnog. And my kids didn't have any idea that I had done that. With or without the protein powder, again, doesn't matter if protein is not a driving force in your nutrition currently, or you're just wanting to enjoy eggnog with a lot less sugar. Just omit the protein powder. You're going to add a little extra vanilla to it, and use a really good vanilla. Don't use the cheap imitation stuff. Get a good, like a double strength bourbon vanilla is by far the best. And sweetener of your choice, Stevia, Splenda, coconut sugar, something, agave nectar, or something that's low glycemic and or calorie free, depending on your views on all of that. And you can have eggnog that's absolutely amazing. You'll never know the difference.
I've never been an eggnog person, I think primarily because of the calories. And so I might have to try that this year. I
promise I won't let you down.
I know you won't.
I won't. I wouldn't let you down.
I trust your recipes.
No, when you add the alcohol to it, I mean, you got to be careful there. But, in and of itself, eggnog is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I think I could do it without the alcohol. I mean, I'd rather, if I'm going to consume alcohol over the holidays, I'm going to consume it in healthier, safer ways rather than adding it into all other foods and just getting these excess calories. But the only food that I add any kind of alcohol to intentionally is my chili as a flavor. But the alcohol really just kind of burns off from it. It's just one of my key ingredients to kind of give some flavor so that the bite of the extreme spices that I put in my chili don't, take away from the flavor of the chili. Yeah.
I might have to get your chili recipe.
I don't really have a recipe. That's what's funny is like, people, what's your chili recipe? It's like, I just throw stuff in, I start with.
So what alcohol do you use in your chili?
Generally, whatever beer I have in the refrigerator that I don't really want to drink. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I wouldn't use like, somebody gave me a pumpkin spice lager or something like that. I'm not going to put it in my chili. Those are ones that you just either sit in the refrigerator forever or you just finally dump it out. But, I mean, ideally would be something like a stout, like a Guinness or something like that. But even just a pale ale, whatever it might be, I'll just throw that in there.
Yeah. We have a Guinness shepherd's pie recipe that we love.
It sounds good.
And in and of itself, it's not bad at all. So, yep.
So we can indulge in food and not damage our bodies. I mean, food can be enjoyed. And I think too many people worry about our weight. Yeah. It's like, why eat if you're not going to enjoy it? And that's one of the reasons why I tend to favor pushing exercise and lifting weights as opposed to strict dieting to improve your body composition. Because if you're dieting from the standpoint of a hypocaloric diet where you're restricting calories, you're depriving yourself. That's never going to be enjoyable. But if you can eat healthy and burn the calories and have what calories and nutrients you consume going into building your body and fueling that exercise, then you can enjoy food because there's no guilt involved. And that energy is all going into productive building muscle and making your body healthier. So it's a lot of a mindset.
Absolutely. And we can deprive ourselves, but the body will only allow us to do that for a short time. Look at all the programs that are out there. They're usually 90-day, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 90 days, whatever it is. And that's for a reason. You can suffer and you can put your body through hell and back for a short period of time. And then the body's going to go, you know what? We're done. We're done. And you're either going to plateau, which is then frustration and you quit, or you're going to get to a point where your body's like, no, screw it. We're going to do whatever we want, eat whatever we want. We need it now. We need it all right now. Yeah. And that's where the yo-yoing starts. And you might, when we talk about, I get asked all the time, what do you think about fill in the blank diet? You can put in any diet in that blank space. I get asked all the time. There's 100, I think there's currently, Wikipedia adds them every year. I think when I just did my last 12 challenge, when I looked it up, I think there's 167 diets listed on Wikipedia currently, different diets. different intermittent fasting, nutritious, you name it, it's on there. And I'll get asked all the time, what do you think about blah? And I never answer their question. I ask them 3 questions in return. The first question is, are you ready to do this the rest of your life? Because if you have 40 years or 50 years left of your life, I'm going to live till 100. I'm just putting that out there.
Me too. I want to live beyond
halfway
100.
there. Exactly. Are you ready to do this for the next 40 or 50 years? Because if you're not, why are you doing it? If you can't do it for that long, is it really going to do anything for you? And some people might answer, yes, that's okay. There are some things, if you are in a devastating, area of your life where if you don't make some drastic changes over the course of these next few months, you may not live past those few months. That's a different situation. I'm just talking about the general population. Be ready to whatever you start, be ready to do it for the rest of your life, because it should be sustainable. Now, it should be your number one red flag. If it's not sustainable, don't start it. The second question I ask people is, do you know of someone that has used this method, lost all their weight, met their goal, and maintained it for more than 2 years? And again, this goes back to sustainability. A lot of people get wrapped up in these quote diets that are super successful because they know a friend that lost 30 pounds on a keto diet. Yeah, but how long did they maintain that 30-pound weight loss? And if they didn't, how much did they gain back on top of that? That now they have to work twice as hard to get back off again. So it goes back to realistic expectations and sustainability. And the third question I ask is, would you let a 6-year-old child eat like that? And most people are like, well, they're still growing. So are we. We're aging. We're just growing differently. Our bodies don't stop just because we're past puberty. Our bodies continue to grow and change. And especially as we hit middle age, hormone and muscle, and everything else weight management becomes much more challenging as we age if we're not careful. And if you're not going to let a 6-year-old child eat like that, well, it's probably because it's really unhealthy and it would not be good for a growing, developing body. Well, we are grown, but we are still developing, and now we're aging. And how much more important is it for us to look at ourselves as a 6-year-old child in the realm of nutrition? Because if we don't, we're not going to live to be 100. We're not going to live to be a healthy, mature age. So it's no different. And if you wouldn't let a child starve for 12 hours with intermittent fasting, maybe you should really do some research. Is that really healthy for me as well? And again, some people may answer yes to that question. Some people may answer no to that question. It's all a personal journey, and our bodies are so unique, and the way we're put together and how our bodies respond to different things. But it's something to educate yourself on and know before you jump into something that could be really devastating long term.
That's good advice. I like that. I also wouldn't, when we look at a healthy diet for an adult, why don't we apply that same diet to children? We tend to say, well, it's okay for the child to eat this way. I would need it as a diabetic or pre-diabetic, but they're a kid. They need the calories and they need to have fun with their food. Well, you're creating the habits that they're going to have to break down the line. Yep. So if you want them,
and we rationalize it.
Yeah.
And then we're training them in these unhealthy habits that we're trying to untrain. And that's the other thing that it's going to be a fourth question I add to that list is, what example are you setting for your children? Because I have so many people that I have had the opportunity to work with. And if they took a moment to realize that their children are listening to everything they say about themselves, their children are watching what they eat, how they eat, their children are listening to how they talk about food, and how are our children going to grow up? If I'm saying horrible things about my body image and my child thinks that I'm beautiful and they look just like me, everybody's telling them, oh, you look just like your mom. But mom is saying, oh, I'm so fat, I hate my body, body shaming myself. Guess who else I'm body shaming? I'm body shaming my child.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. And we want to tell them they're beautiful, but they're hearing us say horrible things about ourselves, or we're talking about food in such a negative manner, and yet we're feeding it to them. How is that showing our love for our children? Or anybody else that we're in contact with? we forget that people pick up on our cues and what we say about ourselves and how we speak about other things. And unfortunately, it becomes something we don't think about. We just destroy ourselves all the time, but we don't realize what effect that has on others around us. So not only do I want to walk the walk, I want to talk the talk, and I want to make sure that I'm talking positively. I'm being honest about myself. I'm not a bodybuilder anymore. My body is changing. It doesn't look like it used to. But I can be honest about that, but I can be honest in a very positive manner. I'm working on it. I'm learning how to appreciate my new body, things like that. And the way I speak about food, it's not because I think it's evil or bad. It's not good for me. And I want to live a long lifestyle, and I'm happy doing this over here. So there's ways that we can be honest about things, about the way we view ourselves, the way we view food, but in a very positive, forward manner.
I can't top that. That's great advice. You need to have your own podcast.
No, I just want to jump on yours every once in a while.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about alcohol. We mentioned that a little bit earlier, and alcohol in the holidays. How do you approach it? I know you said, I know you love wine, but you don't overindulge in it. But I remember a few times after bodybuilding competitions, that was one of the things that you were most anxious to kind of just sit down and have a glass of wine.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. And we lived, for those that don't know my story too, we lived in Germany for 17 years. So wine and beer, I'm not a beer drinker actually, but is very much a part of the culture. And it's not for the purpose of indulging, but just for the purpose of the experience of a meal. So we very much adapted that. And everybody's like, what are you doing in South Africa? I'm like, we mountain bike all morning and we drink wine all the rest of the day. And it's not too far from the truth, although we drink a lot of water in there too. With alcohol, especially with elevated A1C numbers, which is the precursor to type 2 diabetes, that is something that I take very seriously and I'm very careful with. With alcohol, again, coming back to sugar, if it's sweet, so a lot of Americans drink the very sweet wines, strawberry wines or the Lambruscos or the Moscatos, which are basically syrup. They're incredibly high in sugar. And if you overindulge in those, you're going to have a mega hangover, by the way. So don't do it. Try to stay with your half dry to drier wines, both red and white. Any type of alcohol is going to have an effect on your metabolism. Any type of alcohol is going to drop testosterone levels, both in men and women. And that is one of our major hormones that are responsible for helping with weight management. Also depression. Testosterone regulates so much more in the body than people think. It's not just for muscle growth. There's so many other factors in the body that testosterone regulates. Having a glass or two, not a huge deal. When you're overindulging and over a long period of time, that can have significant effects. When we talk about visceral fat, the fat that surrounds our major organs in our body, the beer belly and things like that, alcohol is as a number one contributor to that. So that's something to be aware of as well. But it also, when you drink alcohol, and especially with the overindulgence, you're less likely to have that discipline on the forefront. We get a little bit relaxed, we're having a good time. Discipline's going to kind of come over here and sit in the corner. And that's when, if we have the plans that we didn't share with people to hold accountable, that's where alcohol can get us into a slippery slope as well with our judgment. And not just, I'm not talking about being completely inebriated, but you have a few and you're feeling great and you're a little lighter feeling, you might, I thought I was going to have half a piece, but I'm just going to go ahead and have a whole piece. So there's lots of things to think about when you're consuming alcohol, especially when you're talking about fitness goals, but it has a significant impact on our metabolism. Even if alcohol doesn't have a high caloric value coming with it. For example, one of my reduced sugar-free alcoholic beverages is a mojito, and we use Sprite Zero with Bacardi Limon. And one shot of 40 proof alcohol is going to run about 66 to 70 calories per shot. Now, when you're talking about brandies or whiskeys, you might get a little higher because of the sugar content, but your clear alcohols like gin and vodka are going to be on the lower side. Even though it's only 66 calories, everybody's like, oh, cool, it's a low calorie drink. I can have like 5 of those. No big deal. However, the alcohol has to be processed first. That's going to be like, your body's like, okay, we got to take care of this. So everything else that comes along with that, whatever you've eaten or whatever, the snacks you're having or whatever, that gets kind of put on the wayside while this alcohol is being processed. And guess what? If your body can't use it, it's going to convert it and it's going to pack it away for later so it can survive. Because even though we're way past needing survival, food for survival, our body still has that gene. So it will shut everything else down and pack that stuff away. So, and then you keep piling that on, and then you keep eating more and more, then it just gets into a situation where there comes the 10 pounds over the holidays very easily if we're not careful.
And we have a lot of people who tend to have those, like, as we're preparing the meal or getting ready for the meal, kind of that appetizer drink is actually kind of working contrary to your ability to be able to process and utilize the food that you're going to be consuming. So it's probably better maybe an after dinner drink as opposed to a pre-dinner drink, or what would you recommend there?
What worked well for me is I would make sure I was really hydrated, because if I'm hydrated, I'm less likely to slam a glass of wine because I'm thirsty, because I have done that before and that's a bad idea. And again, sharing my goals. Like, I would tell my husband, I'm going to have one glass of wine with dinner, period. That's it. And so I would make sure my dinner is in front of me so that I'm not tempted to drink that glass of wine first and go, you know what, let me just have one more. So I would have my dinner in front of me, and that way I can, and again, like I spoke about, for us living in Europe, wine was part of the experience of dinner. And it's not just the food, but it's the company you're in, the entire experience as a whole. And having that glass of wine with my meal allowed me to still enjoy that, that's more important to me than just, having a ton of wine. I really like the taste. I like it paired with a great meal. I love it in the company of friends. And that kind of satisfied my needs, I guess. But I had to share that.
Yeah, I think with alcohol, one of the big things is for it to be like a dessert or any other food, it needs to be enjoyed. And it shouldn't be something that we're going to just, why am I drinking this? Or, have a regret after you've consumed it. It should be consumed not for the alcohol and the buzz that you get from it, but for the experience that you get with it, and a little bit more of the social piece that goes along with it. So something that you can nurse and drink very slowly and enjoy is going to be better for you than something you're slamming. I never understood shots.
Yeah.
And even, growing up, going to a number one party school in college, I was never really a big shot person. And beer even, I mean, I have moved away from drinking much beer because I feel like I've had it all. There's nothing new, and it's like, oh, it's just another IPA. And we've adjusted to looking, when we do have beer, to looking at the ABVs, because the lower the ABV, the fewer the calories that you have in there. And then now looking at some of the ones that are more like what they call them, like a fractional IPA, is actually reduced calories, and it's maybe 100 calories, but it's got fewer carbohydrates and fewer calories overall, and it still has that taste to it. But if it doesn't have the taste to it, why drink it? There was a number of years ago, I got in the bod pod at my lab and realized that my body composition was much higher than I wanted it to be, and the numbers were higher than I liked. I mean, I knew I was a little higher in fat than I wanted to be, but the numbers were just, I don't like those numbers. And so it's like, I got to trim down some weight. And my wife came home with some Michelob Ultra, not to diss Michelob Ultra, but I'm going to diss it. I opened one of those bottles, and it was just like, would too. Yeah, it's like, especially after spending so many years in Germany. I mean, how can you drink any of that stuff that's water? It's like, what's the point in drinking this? If I'm going to drink something, I want it to be an experience. And, when we came back from Ireland, Scotland this year, I've never really been into whiskeys, but I have suddenly this taste for, trying some different Irish whiskeys. And so we're exploring those, but it's, the taste and the experience with it, not slamming them down. And so it's, a little bit of that on occasion, and it's an enjoyable experience. It's not for the point of getting drunk. And if the alcohol wasn't in it, it'd be even better.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm waiting for them to come out with an alcohol-free wine, but no, they just haven't done it yet.
It's called grape juice.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's high in sugar too.
But I think you make a really great point, and it is about the experience. So when we view food and beverage, it should be about the experience. And that was one of the things, to go out with a friend, during my contest prep. I may have eaten before I actually got to the restaurant because that restaurant didn't offer anything that I could have on my nutrition plan for, to keep me within my goals. And even now, there's some restaurants that there's really nothing that I would enjoy that's worth the calories, and it's not healthy. So I'm happy to sit and have an iced tea and a side salad because it's not about the food. That's the thing. Think about your holidays. As exciting as the food is, are you there for the food or are you there for the people? Are you there to share the day with your friends and loved ones? Or are you only there for the food? And if you're there for your friends and your loved ones, the food is a bonus. Yeah. So any beverage or food that's put in front of me is a bonus to whoever my company is. And most often that's my husband. I adore my husband. We've been married 28 years. And the food really is a bonus because I'm there because we get to spend every day together. And I love that. When I'm with my kids are my life. I love spending time with my kids. I'll cook dinner for them. We can go eat out. It doesn't matter, but it's not about the food. It's about my friends and my family that I'm with. And if that is my primary focus, and if that's my reason for being there, everything else is just kind of meh. I can do it or I don't have to. And I think if we start viewing our meal times with who we're with, that could help change things too, especially those just getting started. Make your primary focus your company, not what's on your plate.
Yeah. So any tips for planning a holiday day, the family's coming together, how you can plan your day so that we're focused on the family, not on the food and the meals? That makes sense?
Yeah. I think, putting health first, and it kind of going back, kind of recap of what we all talked about, making sure that we're speaking good things about ourselves, making sure we're speaking good things and feeling confident about the food that we're preparing, that it is healthy. And that's, preparing food, like that's why I'm such a huge foodie. That is my love language. I want to love on people because I want them to have a full belly. I want them to feel warm and fuzzy and comfortable in my home. I want them to feel that I just poured out my love for them through a meal. But I also, in doing that, I want to make sure that I'm not devastating their health in the process. I want to make sure that the food I'm feeding people is actually making them healthier, making them feel good in more ways than just my love for them, but is actually doing some physically good things for them as well. So I think if both the cook and the recipients of that food, if we can kind of make that our focus, how are we loving on people? Are we loving them in a healthy way, or are we trying to slowly lead them into diabetes and heart disease? Yeah. And it can be simple. It doesn't have to. You don't have to overhaul your menu. Again, it's a day, so enjoy your day. Mm-hmm. Make sure that joy and love and laughter is the primary focus of your day. But can I make some small changes? Can I maybe decrease the amount of sugar in that pumpkin pie and use half stevia and half regular sugar? Or can I maybe leave the marshmallows off the sweet potato casserole and find some other topping that's a little bit healthier alternative? Even decreasing something or making it slightly better, small changes yield big results over time. So try to find little things you can do to make your meal as enjoyable as possible.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for me with my family is the number of meals that we end up having on a holiday. That you have to have a big, this big family breakfast, and you have, certain appetizers throughout the day, and then, your big holiday meal. And it's like, I don't need all that. I'd rather just kind of get up. I want to eat less in the morning. I'd rather just have, a cup of coffee with some coconut oil in it that just kind of fills me up and, gets me some energy going through the day, delay any consumption of food as long as possible, and save for that bigger meal so that I can enjoy those calories and not feel like, okay, yeah, it's probably not the best meal timing for my health, but from an overall caloric intake, it's it's much better for me. So I can enjoy those calories, feel like, okay, I'm not going overboard for today too much. And, the next day I'm feeling a little bit better.
Yeah. And even something simple like, for breakfast, try something new. Do like an avocado toast bar, like you do a baked potato bar. Just let the family choose, put out a bunch of fun toppings for avocado toast and do gourmet avocado toast for breakfast. It's a light meal. Everybody can have a little bit of everything they want. It's very simple and it's healthy, and you can do something like that. Maybe start something new this year. Or if there's something that you have to have, see if there's a way for you to, again, decrease the sugar, maybe make it a little bit healthier. Use sugar-free syrup on your pancakes instead of regular syrup. And that's going to save us lots of calories and sugar for maybe that piece of pecan pie later on in the evening.
Good advice. Trying to think what else we haven't talked about in this episode. Any final thoughts for our listeners of kind of how we can, again, address food and our habits going into the holidays to be healthy and age well?
I think just, again, moderation and finding the joy in food and healthy foods. As a foodie, there are so many amazing things out there. Try some new things, try some new recipes. My website is full of, my whole goal with my recipe page on my website is if you took any of these to a potluck or served them to your family for dinner, no one is going to know they're healthy. It should not feel like you're depriving yourself to eat good food and to enjoy every morsel of it. So find some recipes, play around, and now is a great time to do some experimenting with some different recipes. And don't tell anybody, and they'll never know. And you're going to be like, I win.
Yeah, isn't that part of the fun of being a healthy foodie, that you're trying to be creative and you're finding new ways to make your food healthier while still making it enjoyable?
Oh, that's my biggest joy. I love it. I send food into work with my husband all the time, and nobody knows.
They don't get the hint that this is coming from Sandi. It's got to be healthy, but damn, it's good.
No, I get to sprinkle my health and fitness like a little fairy all over the place, and nobody ever knows.
So you're the health and fitness fairy. That's going to be your new name.
Yeah, that's going to be my new name. From beefcake to health and fitness fairy. I love it.
There you go. That'd be your autobiography. From beefcake to healthy fairy. So
hey,
awesome.
I'll do it. I'll take it.
Well, I know you are in South Africa on vacation. I really, really appreciate you taking the time out to share with our listeners. And I got to just wish you the best of holidays. I know we're recording this before Thanksgiving, so you have Thanksgiving in there, but most people will be listening this just before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everybody as well, or whatever your holiday might be, Hanukkah or other holidays. And just thanks for helping us to age well.
Yeah, it's always an honor and a privilege to do any collaboration with you, Jeff, and just really appreciate you inviting me back.
Well, you're welcome. And you will be back again, I guarantee, for our listeners. So thank you very much, and age well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.